everybody. Hi, Kaleche.
Hi, Lee.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Kaleche, I was just speaking with, well, an individual that goes by Fiwa, but and her first name I have to go look, but she's Nigerian, and we just had an hour-long chat. So, um, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, other than to say, I'm getting more adept at the Nigerian English accent, I think. So I'll make you proud at some point.
Hello. I think I missed some parts of what you said.
You know, it was kind of rambling. It was just sort of a comment. Like, I spent the last hour on a call with a lady in Nigeria, and
Okay.
and yeah, her she goes by Fiwa is the short name that she uses to be kind to people like me who can't pronounce.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Fiwa still, it doesn't roll off the tongue quite like Precious does. Like that's still pretty cool. I still
Right. Please call me Kelechi. Or you
okay.
call my surname.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, sure. I just
That would be very easy for you to call my last name.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I don't know that I've really tried him before. And I probably shouldn't embarrass myself. Yeah.
Please don't.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Hey, we're 5 after. Let's get going. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome. Friday, the 4th of December, 2020. We've got a couple more community meetings and a lot of other meetings left this year. I think every time I say December, I am reminded of the upcoming holidays. If we end up canceling, everyone will know about that. We'll send a note in advance. This is a good reminder for me. I need to take an action item to go look at the calendar. And if we have something landing, we need to cancel in advance. So anybody traveling for the holidays? Anybody headed out to pick up some coronavirus and bring it back to your loved ones? I don't know how it seems. We were having a little bit of a trouble with the virus here in here where I am. People enjoyed Thanksgiving, and then now now I think my kids will probably do school virtually for the rest of the year, just because it's going around. So I hope that you're all well. I hope that none of you know people that are affected. Okay, on to some better notes. Good to see all of you here. I recognize each of the names of all of you, including Mr. Alvarez, Neil. But Neil, this is your first time on the community call, I think. Neil, do you mind introducing yourself, saying hi to everybody, just talking about where you're from, what you're interested in, letting people get to know you? And hey, Neil, can you hear me by chance? Okay. Cool. All right, we'll come back to Neil. Neil, interrupt me when you get audio, if you would. But it's nice to see Josh back as well. Josh is with us. Okay, very good. Yeah, Neil, does your audio work? If it doesn't, we'll just catch you in chat. I see your messages coming through. So, all right, good. We've had a few other people join the community this week as well. We had a Linkerd workshop given on Wednesday this week, which brought in a few new community members, which is nice. A few new users of MESHERY, a few new users of Service Mesh Performance. So yeah, that's always, so anyway, that's always nice. I'm not sure that any of those workshoppers are on today's call. Nope. But speaking of workshops, we'll have a couple more workshops on Istio coming up this week. These are both being held through O'Reilly's platform. So I think it's been a very well understood and kind of a long-standing understanding by each of you that as you want to get more into service mesh technology, that there's workshop material for you to take and self-study. So one of the many, many benefits of being a community member here. But just signal if you're looking for those slides or those labs. Another quick announcement is, so KubeCon was held, a couple of weeks ago now. Guess what? It's no surprise that you're internet famous or your work is being shown. So, I honestly, I didn't read this article, but of a couple of the talks that we gave, people are paying attention. They're looking at the landscape, noting the differences between service meshes and trying to understand these things. They are also talking about MESHERY and service mesh performance. So they're talking about our abstractions, SMP. I've been talking about SMP with a few of you. A few of you who are working on MeshMap. MeshMap is going to represent visually service meshes. And as it does, it needs to track all kinds of information, metadata about the service meshes. As we catalog that metadata, it turns out like that's in large part what SMP is. So briefly, for those that aren't as familiar with this project, SMP, it is code-wise very small in nature. Code-wise, it's a set of protobufs or just a set of metadata that's being defined about a service mesh. So when you go out and look at the project, here's the project site, the code that's in it. Not very much. Most of the code is just the project site itself, but the actual project, the actual specification is here under protos. And right now there's 3 of them. I think the largest one being the largest one being called Service Mesh Performance Proto. And there's a bunch of things that we want to track about a service mesh. Let me go back to this more simple one here, this very short one, just to convey the notion to you that very simply, everyone here knows that there's more than one service mesh out there to use. And this file, this protobuf, this proto, is a way of categorically enumerating the name of or identifying a service mesh, saying, hey, as MESHERY and other tools want to identify that that a service mesh is console, it can use this standard format for doing so. And any project that implements the SMP specification would be interoperable with one another as they go to identify something like a service mesh. And so therein lies part of the value of this spec. The spec goes on for much longer to talk about, and actually Nisarg, who's on the call, Nisarg, I don't think that we've had a call where we sort of walked through this spec, and we don't need to do that today. I think you've no doubt you've already looked over it, but it goes on for a lot longer to identify a lot of very specific characteristics of a service mesh and of how it's performing. And to the extent that this becomes a common way of identifying service meshes and measuring their performance, that's what this news is about. So this is actually the first news article that I've seen that where someone has written up about SMP. And I know if Pratya or Javier were on the call right now, they would be just really perturbed about this. They would be perturbed that they killed off the S in SMP. I think in a good way. We don't need to say service mesh performance specification. We just say service mesh performance. And they spent a lot of time trying to eradicate the use of that word. And then here it is in a slide that I forgot to take it out of. And now it's publicly referenced with that. But I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate you all, because I didn't tell this news source to come write this up or to come do anything. They're finding it very interesting and they're writing it up. So kudos to all of you. It's pretty cool. As a matter of fact, I was just on LinkedIn a moment ago, and HEB, which is a national grocery store chain in the US, and the biggest one in Texas, which is where I am, and which is Texas is a large state. Anyway, HEB is a big old organization, and they are pointing out the news article. And really, when you look at the article, it starts with us and it ends with us, which probably says something about how important they think that the work is. So pretty cool. I mean, literally Kush's name is called out in there, but Josh and Pratya and soon Nisarg and a number of others that have worked on SMP specifically get called out. So yeah, that's awesome. All right, first topic up. Josh, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so can you just open up the member profile page? Okay, so basically what we are doing is currently we had just the simple card for each of the members, and on for the individual pages we just had the card enlarged, but we moved on to have some more information about each of the contributors. So like this is an example of what is required for each of the contributor. So what we wish to is we'll mail you all with this example link and all those stuff, so you can just push up, like you can just send a PR to the Layer5 NG branch with those changes you wish to incorporate, that would be seen on this individual member pages. So like it's basically 2 to 3 things: location, skills, and something like 80 to 100 words of a small description stating from where you are, or what what work have you done with Layer5, like you have worked with MESHERY, or you have worked with SMP, or you have worked with websites or something. And yeah, that is very quite thing that we are looking for. So like we'll be rolling out the mail very soon, and you can just find out the details. And also yeah, so this was the current thing that we had, and what like this is present in the old website as well. So in the new website we wish to have additional info for all the members. And if you think there can be some other addition, or some field that can be incorporated for you but hasn't been marked till now, you can just ping us and we'll try to create something like that. I think in the mail itself we'll provide the link to the Vinayak's the page, so you can just look into it, and or I'll just create an example template as well if required. So basically it's like you just have to update your own profile, you just have to give in the details, and that's like no prior knowledge of React Gatsby, nothing is required, you just have to type in those things, and we wish to do it as soon as it possible.
Anybody have any comments on that? To add just a little bit more, this Vinayak's profile is a good example because he actually has a short bio and his location and skills. Actually, Josh, it strikes me that we need to communicate. Vinayak he has the bio because he's the one that's been enhancing the page to look a little bit better and have this info. I think that there's one more iteration of what we were doing here. I think that Vinayak was going to publish. Maybe I could be misremembering because I don't remember if we were trying to switch to time zone or if we were just sticking with location. But
Yeah, we discussed about it in the meeting, but I don't think we heard about it anything from him. Like I haven't seen anything from him as well.
Yeah. So Kishore, good question about like using the GitHub API to reach out and retrieve the member's profile info. Yep, that's possible. Although it wouldn't work well. About half the people don't have their actual name up there, much less an actual profile, much less is that actually done in a standard way. Of the standard way that they have a little, anyway, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't, because even at that, then some people might say, yeah, but I want my thing to say something different here than it does over there. And like, what would be better is to try to grab that from LinkedIn. But then even at that, like, nope, people can just put in a little bit of text and put in the other stuff. So the one comment that I had was to what Josh had said is that it would be ideal if to be able to list out the projects and the project logos that a given individual has worked on or feels comfortable with or feels like they're associated with. And so I think Ruth's card or probably any Meshmate card is a good example of, you would imagine that the MESHERY logo, the SMP logo, the Get Nighthawk logo, the MESHERY operator logo, any of the project logos could show up. And so that's really up to you as an individual community member to come update your profile and signal as to what projects you'd like to have affiliated with your name. So there'll be an email going out to folks just to ask you to come do that. For my part, some of the comments around this are that some of you have noticed that there's different color coding happening here, and that's that some contributors are active and some have been here, done good works, and have kind of moved on in their focus, and we want to continue to uplift them and their works, but also recognize sort of who's still around and ready to be actively engaged. So as we send out the request for everyone to update their profile, we'll also send it to the inactive members, and hopefully no one's offended that they're listed as inactive. I don't think it would be as a surprise to any of them because we really wait for a long, long time. So Okay, any other comments on that? Next topic up, Kishore.
Yeah, could you open the events page reference? I think it's in PR. It's not yet updated.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yep, sure. It is.
Okay,
Uh,
it's closed.
no, it's not updated. It's the implemented table type of filtering.
Yeah. This is the work that I done lastly. Now I am working on the upcoming events. Now I'm planning to keep the upcoming events below the description. Like want to learn below that. I'm planning to give. It's like a card. It will be like uh, automatically changing. If you have more than one, it will automatically display in the next one like that. And also it have a join now button that highlights something like that.
Say the last part again, Kishore.
It will have button join now button with a gradient filter.
Oh, I see. Okay. For the upcoming events.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
Just to remind Kishore, like we had discussed about, yeah, this one, the meetups part, we would have this one differently. Like this is the general link to the meetup page, not of the individual event. So like we talked about, we'll have this in the first row. So like, are you also working on that?
I did for that. I gave 2 links below that.
Uh, can you open the events page once, Lee?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Uh,
Yeah. See,
okay, so like in the card itself.
Yeah, I gave it like that.
All right.
Okay.
Something for us to think about a little bit more. It's a Yeah, good. Maybe good topic for Monday's websites call but Kishore, I thought it would be nice for everyone to get a little bit of a look at the new site, how it's shaping up, and since we were kind of talking about, since you're actively working on that section, and we're kind of talking about a couple of upcoming workshops that good for people to see how that's changing.
Yeah, and just a general thing for like anyone who's working on websites call. So like the dependencies have been like recently updated, and it like the older ones showed error in some of you building upon the site. So like please try to have your branch or fork up to date, so like it won't show any error on building up. Tanu just made those changes.
Nice.
That's it.
Any other comments or feedback for Kishore on that events page? All righty.
Hello.
Utkarsh. Yeah, go ahead, Vishal.
Actually, I have an idea, but about the header page. Can you go header page?
Yeah.
Sorry, footer page.
Yeah. So that's not the latest. Let me go here.
Yeah. Can you add as a one more part about the cool stuff store, like as t-shirts, badges, and many more things related? I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. So it sounds like probably under community today. So yeah, if we kind of look at the
I think it's a. I'm looking and hello. I'm looking for the Red Hat page, and that website is a cool stuff store. And this website is like yeah, you can see the badges or t-shirts and many more things.
sure. Yeah, I guess yeah. Even if we don't, makes sense to me. Like, I think. I mean, for my part, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that go on in the community that we're not representing very well. Some of us, um, um, Pratya Banerjee or Neil, he just won a hackathon this last week, and that's pretty neat. He's got a project called Secure PDF, and he collaborated with some others, and so it would be nice to elevate that and support him as just a random example of like other things. So we've had a kind of a long-standing thought that one of the things that would be nice to have on either on this page or on another community page is something of a collage of various accolades that individuals in the community have had as it relates to things that they've done here. And so, yeah, good suggestion, Vishal.
Yeah, just like he was mentioning about the merchandise link, like in the Red Hat website in the footer, it's present the merchandise link
Oh, okay. Take a quick look.
in the footer.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the cool stuff store.
Oh, cool stuff. Cool stuff. Wait, oops.
It's right corner. Is this what you're talking about, Vishal?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Not, I have nothing else to add other than that. That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. There's, a few people have been asking for like embroidered shirts, and we actually have a stack of shirts here to send out to folks. I got to say, like, it's incredibly expensive to ship things internationally, and so we have only sent so many. But participating with a store that will print them might be the right thing to do. So, good suggestion. Very good. Next topic is Utkarsh. Utkarsh, you've been working on the Istio adapter.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure that how, like, should I just talk about it, or because I don't have a website that I can demonstrate.
You don't have a cool stuff store for the Istio adapter? What's going on?
Yeah. So should I go through the PR, because I think that might just bore a lot of people, or should I just talk about that, what the PR adds?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, I think that there's a couple of unique things about what you're working on the Istio adapter that has to do with Windows and then with sort of a kubectl expose capability.
Yeah, so now like this is the linkerd adapter. I recently added a function in linkerd adapter which is quite similar to kubectl expose, except for the fact that you can expose services or deployments in any of the namespaces. So yeah, basically this new function, what it allows you to do is you can use it to basically expose any kind of services and deployments in any of the namespaces. Right now we are using it in Linkerd adapter to expose the Prometheus instance that Linkerd service deploys on its own. That's something that we are using it for now. But as in general, this particular function can be used for any to basically. This is exactly analogous to what kubectl expose does, and it's now present in the Linkerd adapter. We have the capability to traverse through the cluster to find out all the resources and then expose them.
Nice. So let me see if I can. Let me see if I can give a little bit of additional context. Can anyone tell me how what Utkarsh is working on is beneficial to the user? Does everyone get what he's saying? All right. So you all know because no one answers, that means that we're going to talk about it until you do understand. And so here's MESHERY, and people go to deploy service meshes. I guess in my environment, I don't have one deployed just yet. So maybe if I go deploy one while we talk, MESHERY is beginning to be a lot more intelligent and synchronize with Kubernetes or with the underlying infrastructure, or stay in sync with it, such that as you deploy a mesh and as you deploy Prometheus and Grafana, and as you deploy service workloads on top of the mesh, that as a user, you're probably going to want to access those services. How do you access those services? You need those exposed outside of the mesh. So you have like a URL and a port number, and there's something going on with my system, and you want to get at them. Well, that exposure happens in exposing the service happens in different ways depending upon what service mesh you're running. And so, Utkarsh, as you're doing this for Linkerd, are you doing that for purposes of making Prometheus and Grafana remotely accessible?
Yes, yeah. So basically, you can use it like this particular function is pretty generic. So you can use it to expose any kind of service. But right now, its use is limited to exposing Grafana and Prometheus.
So let me ask you some questions around that, because I'm really excited about this. This is great. So everyone, I just started a fresh system. I deployed Linkerd. Part of what came inside of Linkerd in the control plane was a small copy of Grafana, a small copy of Prometheus. Well, good. And MESHERY will connect to those two things and retrieve metrics. MESHERY is discovering the fact that a new Grafana instance and a new Prometheus instance have been deployed. In order for the way that this networking works, in order for MESHERY to be able to connect to Grafana or Prometheus, you may need to, it's not always the case that MESHERY can directly talk to these other systems. And so if I try to, okay, in this case, we're getting a little bit of confusing messaging back. I think actually, this is a bad example, because the way that Linkerd will deploy Grafana is a bit funky or a bit specific to Linkerd. In the way that it configures Grafana, it doesn't necessarily allow external systems other than Linkerd to get to Grafana, but the way that it deploys Prometheus isn't the same. An external system like MESHERY is able to get to it. So Utkarsh, clearly your PR hasn't merged yet. So of the experience, the user experience that I'm having here, how does the kubectl expose functionality improve the user experience that we just saw?
Yeah, so like right now, what the endpoint that you're getting is most probably you won't be able to reach it because you are not in Kubernetes cluster. But we are listing it down because we are familiar that Prometheus and Grafana are present in the cluster. But right now, if when the PR would be merged, what you would be able to do is, as you mentioned, that how Linkerd deploys it, that only Linkerd can communicate with that those instances, those Prometheus and Grafana instances. But once that PR would be merged, we would have the functionality that we can expose those service to the user, even if you are not like, even if the MESHERY is not inside the Kubernetes cluster. And once that is exposed, you can basically collect the data from it, or basically you can do everything. You can communicate directly with those instances. That's not something that we have at the moment. MESHERY cannot, because obviously Linkerd doesn't deploys it in the way that we can communicate with it directly. But after that PR merge, we would be able to do so.
Refresh my memory. kubectl expose, is it, that is not creating, that is not doing port forwarding. That is configuring or updating a service that represents that endpoint. Does it require having an existing Kubernetes service and it's updating the config, or what is kubectl expose doing under the covers?
They basically create another service just to expose it. You can actually, as far as I remember, you can specify the name. Similarly, in like the function that I've added, what we do is we create another service whose sole responsibility is to allow us to communicate with the Prometheus and or whatever the deployment or service we want to communicate with. So what we do, or I assume what kubectl expose does, because I've like gone through the code. So what they do is they create another service whose sole responsibility is to allow us to communicate with it, and they also allow us to specify if we want to do it using node port or cluster IP or load balancer. Similarly, in Linkerd adapter, the function that I've added, that also allows us to specify that if we want to expose it, we want to get an endpoint cluster IP based or node port based or load balancer based. But by default, the function that Linkerd adapter that will be getting is to add a node port based endpoint so that every node can have access to it. But obviously, like, load balancer costs money, so we don't go for it by default. Expose function can do that, but expose Prometheus won't do so. It will give you the node port based endpoint so that you can communicate with
it. This functionality that you're putting into the Linkerd adapter is actually desirable in MESHERY server as well, because that's just, it's a generic capability that we would want to be able to manipulate Kubernetes configuration to expose any service. So this is really good. I'm really neat to see that that's being incorporated. Does that, who else has questions here? Because this stuff is confusing. What the heck is the load balancer versus the node port versus the... So part of the goal, I mean, an ancillary, a related goal to what Utkarsh is working on is taking one more step in terms of initializing the environment. When I provisioned Prometheus a moment ago, MESHERY discovers that and knows that Prometheus is sitting there. It identifies that there's a Prometheus and here's where it is. And if you, the user, want to connect to it, you can. You have to go into settings and configure it and select it. The thing is like, it would seem to me that if there's only one Prometheus available, that maybe that's the one that you want to connect to. And so maybe having having logic in MESHERY to go ahead and connect to, you know, the single instance of Prometheus might save the user a little bit of time, and but would allow us to, if we auto connect, we're auto discovering, but if we also just auto connect, that, well, we would also be able to show some metrics immediately and provide people with, we would reduce the time to value as they're using MESHERY. We would be able to present them with a couple of interesting metrics like right away. So clearly there's some sort of, there's a couple of challenges around this. If you have multiple Prometheuses, by the way, there's been anyway, if you have multiple Prometheuses in the environment, which one should you connect to? Or rather, maybe it's time that MESHERY as a tool has the ability to connect to multiple at a time. That's not hard to get to. That code isn't difficult to write. The point of discussion of doing that, though, revolves around the concept of a context or of an environment. We really need to, at that point, we really need to start to say, MESHERY is capable of actively having connections to multiple Kubernetes clusters, multiple Prometheuses, multiple Grafanas, and we need to empower the user with sort of simple control over that. And you oftentimes find the word environment or context or cluster or something, so that people can, you know, we're gonna have to bring some further controls to allow to enhance this. But I do feel like, hey, we can probably logically take that first step. And if there's one Grafana, if there's one Prometheus, we can go ahead and try to connect and try to show the user value immediately. So, who else has comments before we go to the next topic? So Utkarsh, the Windows-centric stuff that you're looking at on the Istio adapter.
Yeah, so there was a minor update that's in Istio adapter. Now you should be able to, like earlier we had some scripts, those who should, like they were used to work only in Unix-based environments like Mac or Linux, but now you should be able to run this Istio adapter in a Windows-based environment, because now it supports .ext based files and sets up, basically it installs it for you. So that's a minor update on the Istio adapter.
Now, this brings up an interesting, well, this brings up a challenge as well, a little bit. So if we go out to the MESHERY docs and we look at what platforms are supported, we look at that compatibility matrix, if you will, the platform compatibility matrix. Good, we're saying there's Docker and a bunch of different types of Kubernetes and some package managers that are supported, but we don't actually get specific on whether or not it's supported if you're running Docker desktop on Windows or on, and we don't actually get specific on like whether or not it's supported to run any given service mesh on any given OS. So there's some thinking that someone here needs to do about how to represent that or how to start to track that.
Actually, we will have to do that, because as far as I remember, Puma doesn't work on Windows. So we have documented in the code, but yeah, it's not clear.
Right. Food for thought in case anybody feels like they want to try to wrangle that. Not food for thought, I mean an open need. One, since we're talking about MESHERY docs, an update for everyone. There was a switch as of last night from the domain name used to get to MESHERY's docs. Some long time ago when we first started the project, based on a number of different things, based on repositories and which ones were being used for what and et cetera, that the docs themselves, they were published at meshery.layer5.io/docs. Yesterday, there was a change to have those available and published under docs.meshery.io. So if anybody stumbles across an issue where there's a broken link or something, please be aware that that's changed. Cool. All right, Nisarg, we've got 15 or so minutes to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. So essentially, this component related to adaptive load control in Nighthawk. Okay, so I'll just give a brief about Nighthawk and what sort of we are planning to do with it. So Nighthawk is essentially a performance characterization tool, and yeah, okay, thanks. So basically, we are planning to use it as a part of service mesh performance. And this tool would help us to essentially carry out distributed load tests on the service mesh and gather some matrix and analyze them. That's the idea. About the doc that was mentioned, so there was a doc that was released by the Nighthawk team. And so should I share my screen or should I just talk about it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. One second. Yes. Okay. Right. Okay. So this doc was released by the team, by the Nighthawk team essentially, and this talks about a little bit about the architecture of how scaling works in Nighthawk. And in this diagram, if it's visible, so what they have done is they've just outlined how the components work. It's a very straightforward sort of an architecture that we would be leveraging. So basically, they have outlined a forwarding or distributing service. First of all, here you send out your sort of the test configuration that you want to carry out and some details about it and what they do internally. So this is like a single point to which you talk to or your client talks to. And then this service itself generates multiple load test clients. So these are gRPC services that are going to actually execute the load test based on the configurations. And then there's a sync. So this is one of the updates, I think, from the previous design, where now they have a sync where you can actually query the result at a later stage instead of waiting for the results or something. So you can actually get an ID back from this this forwarding service that tells you to, like, using that you can later on query the results associated with that test ID or session ID, so to say. So these load test clients are going to carry out the load test. And so yeah, here is sort of an outline. Here, this component they've showed is like if you have a proxy service, then that's what they've fitted in there. And after they have carried out this test, they are going to aggregate and send the results to this sync. And this sync service will carry out some result aggregations and you can query it. So it's like a straightforward architecture that is outlined in this document. Apart from that, I think they have discussed like some code segments and there are some comments here and there. I don't think we want to go into some details. About the other thing, about the adaptive load control component, I think that is one of bigger interest for us. So we are going to use this Nighthawk tool, and there's a component in this tool called adaptive load control. So I'll share a few things around it. One second. Till then, if anyone wants to ask something. One second. One second, sorry. Yes. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Just for everyone's reference, one of the talk that Kush and I gave, the talk that the news article that we looked at earlier was written about. If you go watch that talk or go look at those slides, you will learn more about how MESHERY interacts with Nighthawk and uses Nighthawk as a load generator to analyze the performance of a service mesh. That this project, Nighthawk, is an active project. The maintainers are adding new functionality, and we are collaborating across communities to try to help that the more that the more powerful it is, the more powerful MESHERY can be, and so
True.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So about this component adaptive load control, again, I'm myself in some initial stages of understanding this completely, but I'll give an overview of what it is and sort of how it works. So the idea is in a load test, what if you want to adaptively find out some amount of load that should be like that your service can handle for some amount of response time or service level performance that you want for your services. So that is what this component can help you do. It can help you converge to some value of load that will meet a certain criteria or constraint that you want from your service in terms of how it performs basically. And this component, so this file is like some header file, and here there's a nice outline actually in comments we can see. So basically a adaptive load controller has a set of helper objects. So what it does is first is collect some matrix from the tests that are going on. After that, it uses some scoring functions to score these results, evaluate these matrix, and then you have to use a step controller component that all of these components you can implement yourself, and it has some business logic that you care about. So the step controller actually tries to converge to a value of load that you want to meet according to the spec. Basically, that is the idea. So here it's written out that through helpers, it performs Nighthawk service benchmarks, obtains matrix from matrix plugins. So you can write your custom plugins as well. They have written some plugins already. You can score the results. Again, these scoring functions and evaluation functions can also be custom, but they provide some baseline functions. And you can consult a step controller plugin. Again, it's a plugin. So you can write your own step controller to determine next load and detect convergence. So all of these plugins are specified through a spec that you provide as a part of the session. And yeah, so this is like a header file, an implementation that we can check. One sec. I just want to show a couple more things. Yes, so no, before this, I'll show some matrix. One second. I think. Huh. So this is so these are some of the matrix that the matrix plugin can return to you. So achieved RPS, attempted RPS, latency, like different matrix on latencies, the send rate, success rate, etc. So you can get these values from the load test, and you can feed it to the next component, essentially the matrix evaluation component, which can then to carry out some kind of evaluations and feed it to the step controller. The results will be fed to the step controller. And as I said, the step controller, again, they have listed out some implementations of the step controller. So there's a trade binary search phase. So it's sort of a binary kind of a logic that is implemented, or an exponential logic that they have implemented. So they have implemented some controllers already, which can be used to find a convergence value for the load. So we can implement our own custom values. And as of now, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what we would be doing, but we can utilize these components in order to carry out performance benchmarking, as well as gather some stats and use it for meshmark. That is the idea. We can implement our algorithms here. That's the plan.
Sorry, that was beautiful. That was great. All right, I'm going to pick on some folks. And so get ready. Mihu, Michael, assuming that you were following that, what do you think? What thoughts come to mind here?
I've been following a little bit. Hi. It's very interesting. I'm just starting using Fortio in a bit another context, but also to test a couple of things with what I'm working on right now. And I think having it to me, it sounds like it's sort of a load tester with advanced capabilities for
Totally.
dynamic load and advanced sort of evaluation and analysis. And I think that's very interesting. Can be very useful.
Yeah, very good. Well, you hit it on the head. Yeah, I think that to your point that there are, and to what Nisarg was saying, is that the structure of this area of Nighthawk facilitates for asking optimization questions, asking and answering optimization questions, like, or even if it's not that's true. And other questions that it helps answer are questions like, under a given configuration, and under a given, and that configuration is like, what am I asking the service mesh to do? And then under different load scenarios, what does the performance look like, or sort of what happens? To be able to do that iteratively, and to be able to take the output of one test as input to the next, and sort of do it again and again. I think there's a number of questions that can be answered that way.
Yeah.
So the weighting, like on line 33, is kind of, I think that there's a couple of words here that are really good, like the use of weight, the threshold and scoring. Those are things that, if you've heard me speak about Meshmark in the past, and the ability to Meshmark just being a new yardstick to measure the performance of your mesh. Like this is a great place to be able to do scoring, to be able to create a Meshmark. And
Yes,
so yeah, so that's
there are scoring functions that you can implement. Like there's certain places where you can implement your scoring functions to evaluate the matrix essentially.
Could you then also say plug in your, depending on some, criteria and your scoring function, that you change the configuration of the mesh, and then
that's where MESHERY comes in. Yeah, totally, exactly. Yeah, because there's so many examples of like questions that you want to ask, which is, hey, I want, I'm running a mesh, I'm running a set of services. I really take value in receiving and having distributed tracing enabled. And I'd like to, my service mesh to retrieve like to sample those traces as much as possible, so I can have a high fidelity view of what's happening over time and where the slowness in my application is. Although there's a cost to, every single trace that you collect, there's a small cost. And so what's the optimal amount of visibility versus not? And some of that actually changes over time based on parameters that the load generator has no idea about. Like those are parameters about, is it Black Friday, or is a certain user signed in, or like, yeah. I mean, service meshes are yet.
No, sorry, nothing. I was just saying that, yeah, it's interesting.
So from my part, I'm just waiting for Nisarg to implement Meshmark. So Nisarg will invite you back when you're done, so you can present that. That'll be good.
Awesome. Okay.
That's fantastic. And Nisarg, thanks so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who else has anything else before we end today? This is it. It's speak now. Tommy, are you over the hump on your Git signing challenge? I hate for you to stay there for too much longer. I've been there. It's a horrible place to be. Anyway, Tommy, just message again in Slack if you would. We'll try to get you over it. Thanks, everybody. We're just over time. And so catch you all next week, same time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.